All right, welcome to The Explainer. Today we're going to talk about a guy who's literally everywhere. He builds rockets, he's trying to rewire our brains, and he can move entire markets with just one tweet. Yep, we're talking about Elon Musk.
So to really get a sense of just how big his influence is, you got to start with this number. And no, that's not the value of some huge corporation. That's one guy's personal net worth, as of early 2024 anyway. It puts him right at the tippy top of the world's richest people. Just wild.
So the big question is, right, how does one single person build an empire like this? I mean, it spans the Earth, the internet, and even inside the human brain. It's not a simple answer. The story doesn't even kick off in Silicon Valley like you might think. Nope, it starts way back in Pretoria, South Africa, with an ambition that, well, literally shoots for the stars.
Okay, first up, from code to commerce. Let's go back in time, way back, to the dial-up sounds and the first .com boom. You know, when most of us were just figuring out what email was all about, a young Elon Musk, he wasn't just watching from the sidelines. He was right in the middle of it, actually building the thing.
So, it all kicks off in 1995. Musk is just 24 years old. He famously drops out of a PhD program at Stanford, after only 2 days by the way, and starts a company with his brother called Zip2. It was basically an online city guide for newspapers. But as you can see, that was just the first step. By '99, he'd sold Zip2 and co-founded a new thing, X.com, and that would eventually merge and turn into the payment giant we all know today, PayPal.
And check this out. When Zip2 sold, he walked away with his first major score, $22 million. Now, for you and me, that's probably retire to a beach money, right? The end goal. But for Musk, that was just the seed money. He took every single penny and rolled it straight into his next, even bigger bet, X.com.
You know, that leap from simple online guides to totally revolutionizing online banking, it really showed us his playbook for the first time. He finds a massive, fundamental industry and just tries to rebuild it from scratch. But here's the kicker. His next targets weren't going to be digital. They were going to be in the real, physical world. And, well, even beyond it. All right, part 2, engineering the future. So after eBay buys PayPal, he's got a huge pile of cash. And again, he doesn't go buy an island or just, retire. Instead, he starts building brand new companies to tackle what he saw as the biggest problems facing all of humanity.
And what happened next was just this explosion of creativity. I mean, look at this list. He wasn't just starting one-off companies. He was building this whole ecosystem of businesses, each one aimed at totally rewriting the rules for space, for energy, for how we get around, and even for what's inside our own heads.
Take SpaceX, for example. The really crucial thing to get here is just the sheer scale of the dream. This was never just about building better rockets. The goal, right from day one, was to make humanity a multi-planetary species. Starting with a little colony on Mars. No big deal.
And then there's Tesla. Now, a lot of people don't know this, but he didn't actually found Tesla, but he was the one who came in with the super important early cash, and he pretty quickly took over as CEO. He's the one who steered it from this tiny niche sports car company into the absolute behemoth of electric cars and clean energy that we know today.
And then you have something like Neuralink, which perfectly shows how he's always thinking about the distant future. I mean, the whole point is to create a direct link between our brains and computers. And this isn't science fiction anymore, folks. It's happening. They actually implanted their very first chip, called telepathy, into a human patient back in January of 2024.
Okay, part 3, the public persona. As his companies got bigger and bigger, so did his public profile. He went from being this kind of quiet engineer to a full-blown global celebrity, with influence that reached way beyond the boardroom. And, as you probably know, he started stirring up a lot of controversy.
And then came what might be his boldest move ever. $44 billion. That's what he spent in 2022 to buy what was basically the world's digital town square, Twitter. He took it private and kicked off a really chaotic, turbulent rebranding to what we now know as X.
So he came in calling himself a free speech absolutist. But as you can see here, that idea got pretty complicated pretty fast. He ended up temporarily blocking the accounts of several journalists who were just reporting on the location of his private jet. And, well, that move kicked off a huge firestorm of criticism from press freedom groups.
And during the COVID-19 pandemic, he got really vocal about his opposition to mandatory lockdowns. He tweeted things like "Free America Now," called the whole panic dumb, and even went against county orders to reopen his Tesla factory out in California.
He even threatened to move the whole company if authorities tried to arrest anyone.
You can also see how his politics have shifted, pretty dramatically. He used to say he was a moderate who gave money to both Democrats and Republicans. But over the years, he's moved to become a really outspoken supporter of the Republican Party and a lot of different conservative causes and figures.
And his tweets about social issues, they've definitely drawn a lot of fire. He once tweeted, "Pronouns suck," and that, along with his general criticism of woke culture, got him labeled as transphobic by LGBTQ+ rights groups. This whole thing also became incredibly personal for him when his own transgender daughter legally changed her name and publicly cut all ties with him.
So that brings us to Section 4. What is Musk's mission? When you have that much power, that much money, what's next? Where do you even go from there? Well, it seems like the answer is the final frontier, really, artificial intelligence.
And here's a really fascinating twist in the story. After he actually co-founded and helped fund OpenAI, he ended up leaving the board because he disagreed with where it was going. And then, in 2023, what does he do? He launches his own competitor, xAI. This pretty much set the stage for a massive, high-stakes rivalry in the race to build the next generation of AI.
You know, in the middle of all this corporate drama and political controversy, he made this really personal revelation back in 2021. He went on Saturday Night Live and announced that he has Asperger's syndrome. And that just added this whole other layer of complexity, right? It gave people a different way to maybe understand his intense focus and his, let's say, unconventional communication style.
So is he a visionary, a disruptor, or maybe just a provocateur? What's his ultimate legacy going to be? I mean, think about it. From changing how we pay online with PayPal to literally aiming for Mars with SpaceX, from making electric cars cool with Tesla to completely upending online speech with X, his impact is just undeniable. But whether history remembers him as a kind of savior for humanity or as a deeply controversial titan, well, that last chapter is still being written.